Hello! Welcome to week 3 of children's literature. So hopefully you've all checked your Dickinson email. I sent a video feedback for the personal literature reflection, and I think there may have been 3 of you that I haven't gotten to yet, but I will get to those tonight or right away tomorrow morning. So look for that feedback in your email. So I have to say it was great. Most of you, surprisingly, I shouldn't say surprisingly, I mean it's fantastic, but the majority of you picked a book that your parents had read to you before. That's amazing. So then you think about that generational love of literature and the words and language. And one of the students I was telling about, there's this book out there called Reading Magic by Mem Fox, and it's kind of a funny word, it's M-E-M Fox, and she writes how to teach kids to read without teaching them to read. And basically what it is that you're just reading to them and they just naturally pick it up. And with my own students, I've noticed that the more you read to them, the more they love it, the more they love it, the more they want to do it, the more they want to do it, the more independent they become at reading. And isn't that the whole idea? We want them to love reading. So if you haven't gotten that feedback from me, it will be coming. If you didn't see your email, check it out. And with the feedback, remember I told you about grading? Like me and grading in this whole idea is I'm not judging you, because how you feel and how you look at reading isn't to do with like better or worse or good or bad. It's like just your opinions. And so if anybody did get points docked on their paper, it's because of either the criteria wasn't met, the length wasn't met, and it wasn't in depth enough for what I was expecting to be for that amount of points. So if you have any questions about the grade that I gave you, tell me. I'm totally up for chatting about this because like I said, I don't feel that grades should be judging. I think they should be a learn from thing. Like our feedback and our assessments should be something that we're learning from. I don't know if you have seen the videos, great. If you haven't, take them time and look at them whenever you have a chance. So I'm going to try to do a lot of the feedback for the assignments like that, and hoping that we can kind of get to talk about more books and more things of how we can be doing this in our classroom. Okay, so week 3, I hope you saw the announcement. That was my mistake. I did the due dates wrong on the Bridge Terabithia, so that was completely on me, and I apologize. I meant to have them so we have an assignment every week, but now because I messed up that grade, some of you have already done the Bridge Terabithia, which is great, so you have nothing to do for a while, but those of you who didn't still have till next Sunday, the 31st, to get that done, and I apologize about that. That was completely my fault. This is my first time using Blackboard, so I didn't see the layout the way I probably should have, so that's on me. So for this week, you have a discussion post, and that's all you have. So if you want to read ahead, that's completely fine. Our discussion post is going to be coming from our book, Reading Children's Literature, and we're going to be on Chapter 2, The History of Children's Lit, and pretty much looking at it as a traditional literature view. And if you had a chance to read the chapter yet, it has some really great questions, like how did we have literature for children back in the day, like when we first started the publishing books, and then does it really have its own genre? I mean, you can have fiction children's books, nonfiction children's books, fairy tales, those kind of things, but do we have a genre of just children's books? We do now, because children's books now are a whole different ballgame than when they were a long time ago. So think back like 200 years ago, 100 years ago, when people were learning to read, students were learning to read, it was the rich that could read because they could afford the books. But the books that they bought for those children were not particularly children's books. They were adult books that children were reading. So a lot of it had to do with the Bible, or history books, or like classic novels, or like a lot of, when they say traditional, they truly mean traditional, like 1600s, 1700s, starting off that kind of literature. And it kind of brings me to the point on page 50, there's a question on the bottom that really kind of stirred my curiosity. It says, is children's literature defined by what children read or what is written for children? I think now, today, in today's age, it's what's written for children. Like all the books that we've been talking about have all been written for children. And for what purpose? Entertainment? Learning to read? Expanding our background? I mean, what would be the purpose of us having stories like, like Stephanie's Ponytail? Why would this be something that of important of children now? Because we're not teaching them anything to do with hair or, learning to read from this book. The idea, I believe, is that we now have switched to the books children are reading from back in the day to reading for children and writing for children, in the fact that we're going to be expanding their entertainment, excitement, like love to read. If we can get children to read like this and get excited about it and get the basis of reading, and then when we get to larger books, something like this is going to be an easy read for them. And so we're expanding knowledge that way. So that was something kind of interesting to think about. So I would like you to read chapter 2, and it's all going to be on the early history of children's literature. And your discussion post this week is going to be, what in this chapter surprised you? Like, motivated you, made you think a little bit? If I was to pick it, I would pick that question right there. Is children's literature defined by what children read or by what is written for children? So that comes to another thing that I was thinking about. Like my child, I've got 3 children of my own, and I had one, my middle child is a reader, like a reader. She's been reading since day one. And I'm pretty sure it was because she was trying to keep up with her older brother. While she was in preschool, he was in 1st grade and he was learning how to read, and she was like, yeah, you can't be better at me at anything, so she's going to learn how to do this. That's kind of how her mentality was. So she started reading books like, she was reading Charlotte's Web at a very young age. And then we think about, so what do you do with a child that can read that well? Do we keep bumping up their level so they can read harder and harder and harder books? Because that is the goal, is for us to have our students get to that point of reading books that are teaching them information instead of just entertainment value. Or do we look at that like she's only 7? I mean, do we give her what a high schooler could read just because she could? Or do we give her like a whole bunch of different books and a whole bunch of different genres and have her expand her knowledge that way at the same level? Obviously, you probably know what I picked. I said, like, the more the better. I mean, there's no reason she needs to be reading like, teenage werewolf, like, love stories when her mind isn't there. But she could read the words. She didn't have any understand like what they meant and had no connection to real life, So of course we went from reading Charlotte's Web to like every horse book, every animal book, every National Geographic book, every mystery book, every Nancy Drew, Nate the Great, you name it. We just went all over the place because that's kind of what I thought was a better choice for her. And then when I'm thinking back in the day of children's lit, when when kids were supposed to be reading adult books, but just because they were reading them, I wonder how much comprehension was going on. I wonder like if the enjoyment was there. Did they read because they felt like they had to, or because they loved it? So there's definitely something to be said about that. So your discussion for week 3 is going to be reading chapter 2 in our textbook, and I want you to pick out something that surprised you, or you questioned, or you thought was interesting, or a tidbit that maybe you didn't know before. And then please put that in the discussion for week 3. You can either do a video chat, you can do typing, you can do however you want to share what that information is. That's completely up to you. And then you and I and the rest of the class will be having a chat about chapter 2, which really is defining children's literature from early history. So it's kind of interesting. So the next thing that we need to think about is your next project. So after the Bridge to Terabithia, which some of you have turned in already, and honestly, it's great. I absolutely love it. So I'm going to kind of share hopefully I'm going to share my screen. We're going to see how this works. Hold the phone.